Hey guys, it's Gianna, Midwifay. Today I wanted to talk about kind of an interesting topic of the elusive bill. Okay, so your hospital birth bill. What is it? What does it look like? How much does it cost? What is it broken down to? I think this is something that my friends have asked me about, patients. People are kind of inquiring about more. So what does it actually cost? What do you actually pay? So I actually printed mine from my second birth. So we're gonna go through that and see what I've got for you. Let's take a look. This video actually was recommended by a friend who read this article, and I will try and find it to post it here, about this woman who was surprised to see Skin to Skin was charged on her hospital bill. And I was like, I have no idea. Literally, this is sad, you guys. Like, being a birth worker for 10 years, working in the hospital setting for about 7 of those 10 years, I have no idea what's charged, how it's charged. I think most nursing professionals especially, we really don't know how these things are charged. Some physicians, part of how they're trained is how billing works a little bit, and to know, and as a advanced practice provider, I know with my charting certain things that need to be charted in order to be billed. However, I don't know how much they bill, and that's something I've never really known. So when I saw my cousin post this video asking about the Skin to Skin, I was like, literally, I don't know. Maybe I should look into this to see if this is really a thing. So with that said, I want to try and go through this video to look at how much the hospital charges, how much the insurance actually pays, and how much you're responsible for paying for your birth. I think a lot of us who work in the hospital setting, especially the nursing profession, we don't really get much training on medical billing, coding, what's billed for, how much. We know the importance of charting, and we know that there are people billing people with the hospital that go through and look at things and bill based on what we're charting, but we're not really trained on how much things cost. So if you were to ask your labor and delivery nurse friend, you were to ask me before this, or even really after this, how much is my birth going to be? I don't really know. So I thought this video was really enlightening to me to go through looking at my bill to see how much it was. It's fascinating. Let me just start off with 2 major disclaimers. 1, I am not a medical biller coder. I'm not claiming to be. I literally printed my itemized statement from my second birth, the birth of my second son, and Googled some things and did my best to explain this. Okay, so that's my first disclaimer. I am not a medical biller coder. I don't know the ins and outs of this. And my second disclaimer is that this birth bill might be not applicable to yours, because I gave birth in like a large HMO facility type. So it was a hospital where the doctors, providers, anesthesia, nursing, everyone's under one kind of bill, versus if I was at a private hospital and got a bill from the hospital facility, a bill from the anesthesia team, a bill from the OB team, etc. So, when looking at your insurance, you'll have to see if it's kind of that group HMO health model. Then it'd be similar to my bill, maybe, perhaps. But if you're in more of that kind of private model where you get different bills, professional fees from the different professional services, and then the facility bill, that likely will be different. So I am not a professional. Also, my HMO type bill might not be the type for yours. Those disclaimers out there, let's take a look. So, like I said, I tried to do my best to break this down and look at this in a way that made sense to me. And so essentially what I looked at it was 3 categories: overhead fees, procedure fees, and medication fees. Now, as I go through this, I'll show you guys, I'll have a close-up of the bill so you can take a look at the different things. You will be able to see the total amount billed for each thing. So let's start with the overhead fees, okay? When I'm talking about overhead fees, I am talking about hospital overhead. So this includes the room fees, so the room for the labor and delivery room per night, which is a different cost from the postpartum room per night. These room costs include your nursing staff fees. Okay, that's probably one of the biggest fees associated with the overhead costs. Your nursing staff, your nursing support staff, that would be any medical assistants, nursing assistants, hospital cleaning services, linens, the food they anticipate you eat, the water they're anticipating you're using. I mean, this is what the overhead fees include. At my hospital, the labor and delivery room fee is $2,035 per night. Okay, you guys, by far the most expensive hotel I've ever been in. Okay, so about $2,000, a little over $2,000 per night is your L&D room fee. Wow. Again, I know this includes the payment for all the nurses, all the staff, all this stuff, but that still shocked me. Another part that I don't quite understand is these additional fees for level 2. Each additional hour is billed at a certain rate. So again, I'm not a biller. I don't know. What I imagine this is things like that immediate postpartum recovery time, or times when nurses are more continuously at the bedside and documenting that for maybe epidural procedures, the birth itself, like I said, the recovery. I am imagining that those are times when they can bill kind of more for the care that you're getting. I don't know, but that's what it looks like to me. And then moving on to the overhead for my postpartum room, that was $3,250 per night. So actually that is the most expensive hotel stay I've ever had. So your postpartum room is billed even more. And again, looking at nursing cares and procedures, you know, your nurse has 2 patients, yourself and the baby. There are more procedures that are taking place there. So I can kind of see that, but still, again, I was just shocked by these numbers, you guys, that $2 to $3 grand a night is what you pay to stay in the hospital. For my second son's birth, I'm going to do a whole birth story for both babies soon. But for my second son's birth, I was induced, and I had essentially 2 nights on the labor in the labor room, and then 1 night in the postpartum room. So my bill should include the 2 nights of the labor and the 1 night in the postpartum room. So you can already see we're racking up, stacking up the dollar bills here, okay? Now let's move into what I'm calling procedure fees. Okay, so procedure fees I'm going to include in here are the labs, firstly. When you get admitted to the hospital, routine procedures starting an IV, and when they start that IV, they do different labs that look at, you know, where you're at right now. They look at your blood count, they look for, which looks for signs of anemia and infection. They look at your blood type. They look for some other infectious disease things rapidly, like HIV, syphilis, and then I gave birth with my second in the time of COVID. So a COVID test is also a part of that lab. So here's kind of a breakdown of what my lab costs looked like. I'm calling labs a procedure because they are. I mean, drawing blood is a procedure, and the way these are billed is separate than the overhead fees or the medications. The second big procedure is the epidural. Now, again, as I mentioned in my disclaimer, 1, I'm not a medical biller coder. 2, I was at a kind of a big HMO facility type place where the anesthesia team is on the same team as the hospital. It's all the same fee. I do know that usually there's a separate bill for anesthesia, and so again, this may or may not apply to you. Please look at your insurance. But the epidural fees were amazing to me. So for the epidural, the first 30 minutes of the epidural was $660. And then every additional 15 minutes that your epidural is running, there's a charge. Okay, so I'm gonna say it again. Every additional 15 minutes that your epidural is running, there's a charge. I was shocked by that. I don't know why. I guess I don't really know if there's a better way to bill it, but I'm like, what is happening every 15 minutes? Like, the anesthesiologist doesn't come see me every 15 minutes. The nurse, I guess the nurse is really with you a lot because, you know, likely you're in active labor, there's things that she has to do. But I just found that really interesting that every 15 minutes there's a charge. And I remember getting my epidurals right after change of shift in the evening, maybe around 8. My son was born a little after midnight. So I only had about 4 hours of an epidural. And this was the total fee for that. So that was a really fascinating, eye-opening thing that I learned by looking at my hospital bill, the epidural fees. So I went through procedures, labs and the epidural, I called procedures, and now I'll go to the other big thing that I kept seeing was the medications. I'll break it down to labor medications and postpartum medications. The labor medications that you get really consist of the IV fluids, lactated ringers or D5 lactated ringers, normal saline, and Pitocin. So here are the costs of those, not super expensive. Another labor medication is the actual epidural medication itself. That medication is called fentanyl bupivacaine mix. So again, that actual medication isn't that expensive, it looks like, but the service of having the epidural is billed every 15 minutes. So you pull the actual the bag one time, that's charged one time. If you have an epidural for a long period of time, that bag may need to be replaced, in which case you'd have a second charge for that. So, just some things to think, that in labor, your main medications are your fluids, Pitocin, and the epidural medication itself. That was from my birth experience. Those are the only medications that I had. There are other ones that may need to be used for other induction tools or in urgent situations, but those are the only ones that I had on my bill. So I've listed them here for you. And then my postpartum medications. Also, most of these were pretty cheap. But for me, what came up mostly postpartum medications are ibuprofen and Tylenol, prenatal vitamins, a gas medication called simethicone, and stool softeners. Some things I'd like to mention that I did not see. I did not see billing for that skin to skin portion. Again, this all got spurred because a cousin of mine posted on my Facebook about this woman she heard being charged for skin to skin. So I do not see any specific skin to skin delineation on here. However, my suspicion is when you look at my overhead fees, when they have different levels and different costs for different levels, it's my assumption that that might be correlating with times when the nurses are more heavily at bedside, during epidural placement, during the birth itself, during the immediate postpartum time, observing the baby and observing mom. And so that might include that skin to skin. I don't know. And again, there is nothing specifically on mine that says skin to skin. And another thing that I didn't see on here that didn't necessarily surprise me as a provider, but I think it might surprise people if they're looking at their bill, line item by line item, there's no actual fee for the vaginal delivery or repair of the tear, or I had a balloon placed in my cervix to start my induction. There's no actual fee for that. I think a lot of people think, okay, this is a procedure, this is what they're doing, why isn't this billed? And you're right, there is procedure, it is a procedure, that is what we're trained to do. However, those things fall under what's called the global OB fee. That's separate than your hospital birth bill. It's expected that you're gonna have a vaginal delivery, and so that is counted in. Now, if you had a really exceptional tear that had to go to the operating room, have exceptional, more specialized care, that would be billed separately. But a normal vaginal delivery, standard tear, normal procedures like a balloon placement that go with the vaginal delivery in case of induction, that isn't billed separately. So again, I wasn't necessarily surprised by that, but other people when looking through their birth bills might be a little confused as to why that doesn't show up. So I just wanted to address that. With all of this said and done, and my very rudimentary understanding of billing, what was my total bill? $20,791.13. Okay? Wow. I've never spent that much money on anything. I mean, besides my home and important investments like that. That's crazy. That just blew my mind. Now again, this was an induction. Overall, it still was a normal vaginal delivery. It wasn't a very long induction. It was, again, 2 nights on labor and delivery, 1 night on postpartum. But for that, which I think is a standard amount of time in the hospital, $20,000 was the bill, okay? Now, as shocked as I was by that, I was even more shocked by this whole insurance payoff versus the contractual write-off portion. So of that total bill, you can see here, my insurance paid $2,572. So that means that the hospital had to write off, they had to have a contractual write-off of $18,219.13. Wow. Again, mind blown. And this is where my naivete of health insurance and billing is going to come in. I just think it's interesting. Like, there's no other service. You know, I don't go to Target like, hey, you say that you're charging 20 bucks for this, but because this is my local Target and I come here all the time, I'm only going to pay $5 for this. So you accept that. You eat the cost of that other 15, I'll take this for 5. And Target's like, okay, yep, that's our contractual agreement, bye. That I don't quite understand. That's definitely an area that I want to explore and learn more about. So I just think it's interesting. Like I said, since I'm not an expert, I used my tool of the internet to look into this. And here is kind of this quote that I had to best explain the idea of a contractual adjustment and why they happen on things like medical bills. So that was fascinating. What was my portion of this, you ask? Literally, my husband and I, we paid the bill through the online billing system of $62. That's right. Our portion of this $20,791.13 was $62. And that, again, mind-blowing. When we look at our insurance website, which I encourage everyone to do if you're planning a birth, you're pregnant, you're trying to look into your options, when we looked at our insurance, it says in-network and then out-of-network, and the in-network option just said $62 for all of maternity and newborn care at an in-network facility. You know, you don't really believe it until I guess you're doing it. And so that's it. That's all we had to pay. Now, for the prenatal care, I had small co-pays for labs and ultrasounds and things like that. But for the big hospital bill, which is what I'm going over now, we had to pay $62. If I remember correctly, I think on my insurance payout page, if I would have gone to an out-of-network facility, I believe I would have had to pay 10% of the network bill. So, you know, that sounds like I'd have to pay 10% of 20 grand, which is much different than the in-network price, right? So this is just the importance of kind of looking at your insurance, what the in-network, out-of-network costs are, what it covers, so you can kind of have an understanding of that before going into birth. All right, so that was my little attempt at trying to understand hospital billing. I hope you found that interesting, diving into my hospital bill with my second birth and my very surface level understanding of what was charged. Was this similar to what your hospital bill was like? Do you know? Did you even look it up? I'd be really curious to see what other people's bills looked like, if you're willing to share. As always, please like, subscribe to this channel. I really am motivated by you guys watching these videos and sharing your comments with me. I appreciate it. I will see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.